If you've spent more than 5 minutes in the Rainbow Six Siege community, you've heard it before. KD doesn't matter. And technically, that is true. But it is also one of the most misleading pieces of advice in Siege. Because whether KD matters depends entirely on where you're playing. In Pro League, KD is often overrated. In amateur and semi-pro competition, it matters a little more. And in ranked, KD suddenly becomes a lot more important than people want to admit. So today, we're breaking down why KD means something completely different depending on whether you're a pro player, a comp player, or just grinding ranked. Section 1. Pro League, where KD matters the least. Let's start with the highest level of Siege, professional play. This is where the phrase KD doesn't matter actually comes from. At the professional level, every player understands their role. Every player knows the game plan. Every player knows exactly what they're supposed to accomplish each round. The support player might spend an entire attack droning or sitting behind a shield. The hard breacher might never get first contact. Flank watch player might spend most of the round watching one doorway. And all of that can contribute to winning without generating kills directly. A support player can finish a match with a negative KD and still be one of the most valuable players on the team. Why? Because professional Siege isn't about individual gunfights. It's about creating advantages. Drones create advantages. Utility creates advantages. Information creates advantages. Positioning creates advantages. A support player may spend 2 minutes setting up a fragger's kill. The scoreboard only shows the kill. It doesn't show everything that made the kill possible. And because professional teams have hundreds or even thousands of hours together, they have something most players never experience: chemistry, trust, coordination. Everyone understands their job. Everyone understands the system. Everyone understands how they contribute. So yes, at the absolute highest level of Siege, KD generally matters less than most people think. Section 2. Amateur and semi-pro competition. The middle ground. Now let's move down to amateur leagues, semi-pro leagues, and competitive teams. This is where things start changing. The teamwork still exists. The structure still exists. The roles still exist. But they're not nearly as refined or efficient as professional teams. Support players are still enabling fraggers. IGLs are still directing rounds. Entry players are still expected to create openings. But mistakes happen far more often. Communication isn't as perfect. Strategies aren't as polished. Because of that, raw gun skill starts carrying more value. If your entry player consistently loses every opening fight, your team is going to struggle. If your top fragger can't convert opportunities, your team is going to struggle. So KD starts mattering more than it does in Pro League. Not because kills are everything, but because the systems around those skills are weaker. However, role context still matters. If a hard support player has a 0.9 KD while enabling the team's star player to maintain a 1.4, that is perfectly fine. In fact, that is often expected. A support player's job isn't necessarily to top frag. Their job is to create conditions for others to succeed. The mistake many players make is comparing every role using the same KD standard. An entry player and a hard support player should not be judged the exact same way. So in amateur and semi-pro competition, KD matters, but it's still only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Section 3. Ranked, where everything changes. Now let's talk about ranked. This is where people get angry, because ranked is not competitive Siege. It's not Pro League. It's not organized comp. It's 5 random people trying to win a game together most of the time. Sometimes without microphones, sometimes without communication, sometimes without teamwork, sometimes without even wanting to cooperate. And that's exactly why KD becomes more important. In ranked, there usually isn't enough structure to make up for poor fragging. A support player can only drone so much if nobody acts on the information. An IGL can only call so much if nobody listens. A teammate can't set up kills if nobody wins the gunfight. When coordination decreases, individual impact increases. And the easiest way to measure individual impact? Kills. That doesn't mean KD is everything, but pretending it doesn't matter at all is ridiculous. If one player consistently goes 2-8 every game, they are creating a disadvantage and are a detriment to the stack. No amount of, but I play support, changes that. Eventually you need to win gunfights, and in ranked, winning gunfights matters more than ever. Section 4. Copper to silver. Ironically, KD matters less in the lower ranks. Why? Because everyone is making mistakes. Nobody knows what's happening. Players overpeak. Players forget site setups. Players leave walls closed or open. Players throw rounds constantly. Because mistakes are everywhere, teamwork can actually create massive advantages. A group of silver players communicating well can beat mechanically stronger players surprisingly often. The game is chaotic enough that teamwork still has a huge impact. So while KD matters, it's not the deciding factor. Learning fundamentals matters much more. Section 5. Gold to platinum. This is where things start changing dramatically. Players develop confidence. Unfortunately, many also develop egos. Everyone thinks they're the carry. Everyone thinks they're the smartest player in the lobby. Everyone wants to be the hero, and teamwork starts declining. You'll hear less useful communication, more backseat gaming, more blaming, more solo plays, more unnecessary peaks. At this rank, players start having decent mechanics, which means if you're consistently losing gunfights, it becomes harder to hide. KD begins reflecting actual performance more accurately. Not perfectly, but more accurately. Section 6. Emerald to Champion. Now we are entering high-rank Siege, excluding Emerald. Emerald is basically a glorified Platinum, but I'll give it to you, Emeralds, okay? You guys are starting to get slowly better. Mechanically, these players are strong. Most understand utility. Most understand setups. Most understand basic strategy. But there's a problem. Everyone thinks they're right. Everyone thinks they're the carry. Everyone thinks they're the reason their team wins. And because most matches are still filled with random teammates, true teamwork never reaches professional levels. This creates a strange environment. The skill level is high, the coordination level is inconsistent, which means individual performance becomes incredibly important. At champion level, if you're sitting on a 0.6 KD over hundreds of games, there's probably a reason. The lobby is too skilled for players to consistently survive poor gunfighting. This doesn't mean every champion needs a 1.5 KD, but it does mean that maintaining a healthy KD becomes a stronger indicator of your ability to impact games in a positive light. So does KD matter? In Pro League, not much. In amateur and semi-pro competition, a little. In ranked, quite a bit. The less teamwork, chemistry, and structure that exists around you, the more responsibility falls on individual performance. And individual performance usually shows up in your KD. The problem isn't that people say, KD doesn't matter. The problem is they say it without context. Because in Rainbow Six Siege, KD doesn't have one meaning. Its importance changes depending on who you're playing with, what level you're playing at, and whether you're competing in a team environment or surviving the chaos of ranked. And that's why the answer isn't KD matters or KD doesn't matter. The real answer is, it depends where you're playing.
Think I need a break, don't care how long it takes. You know I hate the way you make me feel so dark.